Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jed Lee. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and so wicked happy that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in that mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, Castbox, Audible, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have three wonderful guests for you today. Rachel Loftspring will be up first. She is celebrating Mila the Maker and the 200-piece jigsaw puzzle. Later in the show, we'll be welcoming back Mark David Pullen. He is here to celebrate freedom through the narrow gate. And last but not least, Mike Crowder will be joining us, talking all about Wild About the Alphabet. Hey, my friends, we are really excited. Reading with Your Kids podcast is returning to the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, November 9th and 10th at the Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois. Let your imagination come to life at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, the ultimate family play experience. Dive into hands-on fun with the hottest new toys and games, meet the inventors behind your favorite products, and even get a sneak peek at what will top holiday wish lists this year. From interactive play zones to exciting competitions and exclusive giveaways, there's something for every member of the family at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair. And don't miss the Young Inventor Challenge, where kids showcase their creativity and innovation. Who knows, you just might meet the next big inventor. Join us at the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois, November 9th and 10th. Whether you're a game enthusiast or just looking for a fun weekend with the family, the Chicago Toy and Game Fair has it all. And like I said, the Reading with Your Kids podcast will be there, and you may have a chance to be heard on the show. Get your tickets today and bring the magic of play to life. Visit shytag.com for details, and be sure to use the discount code READ, R-E-A-D, at checkout to save on tickets. Join us from the beautiful city of Cincinnati in Ohio. Our guest is here today to celebrate her debut children's book. It's called Mila the Maker and the 200-piece jigsaw puzzle. Please welcome to the show, Rachel Loftspring. Hey, Rachel, how are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Delighted to have you on. You know, as I was getting ready for this interview and reading a little bit about Mila and the 200-piece jigsaw puzzle, I had such fond memories of doing jigsaw puzzles with my daughter.
I love that. It's so fun.
It really is. And that's the whole reason I launched Reading with Your Kids, is that I know that even now when as my kids are adults and they live away and they have significant others and wonderful people in their lives, I know that the really good relationship that my beautiful wife and I have with them now is built on a foundation of reading together. And reading together led to doing puzzles together and throwing the ball around together and watching TV together and talking about music and politics. Well, we try not to talk about politics together, but everything else. And it all springs from that time that we spend sitting and cuddling together, reading great books like Mila the Maker.
Well, thank you. It is all about connecting, and reading and all of those things are such a beautiful way to do that with your kids.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about this book, please.
Absolutely. So Mila the Maker, which, as you said, is my debut children's book. It's a picture book for kids between ages 4 through 8, and it is essentially a story about managing big emotions told within the context of puzzle making. So we have our hero, Mila, and like so many of our kids, she loves to make things. And one day she gets a jigsaw puzzle and it has 200 pieces. That's a lot of pieces, but she is not worried. She has a plan. And so she puts that plan into place and she has her steps that she's going to do to make this puzzle. So step one, she sorts those pieces. She sorts them into edges and middles and finds her four corners, and she's good. Then she moves on to step two, which is building the border. She sets up the four corners and she puts the edges in and she has her border. And then step three, she starts on those middles, and it is hard. She's trying and she's trying, but it is not working, and she gets frustrated, and she has all these big emotions just well up within her, and she starts feeling like she can't do it and this is too hard, and she just explodes. She throws the whole puzzle onto the floor, and her mom comes over and asks her, what's wrong? What happened? And she said, I got all these big I can't feels, and I can't do it. It's too much. And so her mom helps her understand a strategy that can enable her to take the next step. And the strategy goes something like this. Stop what you're doing, take a deep breath, pause, and feel all the feels. Do not react. Think how to act. Decide what next action's ideal. And so Mila does that. She takes a minute. She calms down. She really just lets the feelings wash over her. And then, instead of reacting, instead of just getting mad and throwing all the pieces on the floor, she comes up with a plan, a new course of action, and she puts it into place. So step one, she sorts those pieces. Again, she sorts them into the borders, the middles, the quarters. She gets that done. Step two, she builds the outside of the puzzle again. But this time, she changes her plan. This time, instead of just starting on the middles, she sorts the middles and she organizes them by color, which then helps her put the puzzle back together. And so it still takes a lot of work. It's still hard, but she's able to, piece by piece, go through it and not get upset because she can remember this strategy. And ultimately, she's able to build the puzzle, and she's so proud of herself, and she realizes it's not just being proud of herself for making the puzzle. It's the whole journey of how she got there, how she learned this strategy, how she implemented this strategy, and she's so proud of herself for being able to accomplish more than just a puzzle, although that's exciting too, but to be able to manage her emotions and then be able to act in a way that's productive. And so the last picture is of Mila holding up her puzzle with a huge grin on her face and a cupcake because she likes cupcakes.
I really love that. Obviously, it's great for our kids to feel a sense of accomplishment when they achieve something, when they set out on a goal and they make it happen. But I don't think we've ever talked about helping kids acknowledge the fact that dealing with your emotions is quite an accomplishment in and of itself.
Yeah, because it's hard. I mean, emotions are hard. It's hard for adults too. And so, for me and kind of the whole reason behind this book is I realized as a parent, one of the greatest skills I could give my kids was learning how to manage our emotions and also honoring those emotions. I mean, emotions are good. They tell us, it's like they clue us into what's going on around and within us. And so when we can listen and respect and honor those emotions and then act as opposed to react, no knee-jerk reactions, but really thoughtfully acting, we're really able to be great productive people, citizens, friends, all of these important things that we want to impart on our kids.
Yeah, that's so important. What was it that inspired this book?
Well, because this is something that we deal with every day. Every day we have big emotions and we are working on that. And so this was something that worked for my family, kind of this 3-step process that's built into this book, this notion of we're feeling big emotions. We're going to just stop and we're going to take a pause and a breath. And once we do that, we're going to feel the feel. So step 1, stop, pause, breathe. Step 2, let the emotions wash over. Feel the feel. Get curious about those feelings. And then step 3, action plan. So this was working for my family, and so I wanted to share it with others as well. And that was really the reason for writing the book.
So we're not encouraging kids to not to deal with the frustration, sorrow, and just be positive. It's like, yeah, you're frustrated, you're bummed out, and you're worried, you don't think you can do it. So deal with it and come out on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a pretty big skill to develop. And I think that there's an awful lot of adults who have trouble with that notion.
It's a hard skill, and it's a constant. I mean, I'm constantly reminding myself about it too. It's a lifelong practice.
I guess it's like kind of like, we've seen in the movies, the people, it's like, the hero acknowledges that it's not that I wasn't afraid. It's that I was afraid, but I did it anyways.
That's right. And that's the definition of brave, right? Brave is not being afraid. Brave is being afraid and conquering that fear.
Yeah. A real important lesson for our kids. I'm curious of the process as you were creating this book. You said this was something that was helpful in your family. Why? Because you're a pretty busy person. You're a mom and you're an attorney, and you get I'm sure you have all this free time at your hands to sit down. What was it that made you think I want to put this into a kid's book? I want to write a kid's book.
I was really inspired by my kids. Attorneys often love to write. I think many attorneys want to be writers, and they just are attorneys also. And so I've always been compelled to one day write a book. And it was really my kids, and my daughter is Mila. I've got 2 kids, Mila, who's turning 10, and then I've got a son as well. And so it was really seeing her go through this, and also she is my maker. So this isn't her. I have to tell you that, because she doesn't want people to think that she would throw a puzzle on the floor. Not that there's anything wrong with having those kinds of big emotions like we talked about. But this was inspired by her, and it uses her name. And she also helped me come up with some of the illustrations, including what Mila in the book wears, which is a rainbow dress. Mila loves color. She loves dresses. So a lot of it was because of my kids. And it just feels like another piece of who I am. As an attorney, my work professionally is also helping build families. And then I have my family. We are dealing with these emotions. And so there's all these different threads that came together that made sense for writing this book.
Yeah. I want to touch on that, on your, as you quote unquote, on your website, day job of being a fertility law attorney. I oftentimes will ask authors if they've taken the time to realize what they've done for families, that they've actually created this book, this experience for families to sit down and help them grow together closer. And I'm always touched because for a lot of authors, it's the first time that they thought about that. But you're doing this. You're in the trenches every day. You're actually helping families come together. Can you talk a little bit about your specialty and what you do and how you help families?
Sure. Well, thank you. So, so I'm an attorney. I'm a partner at the Family Law and Fertility Law Group. So, we're based in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm licensed in Ohio, Illinois, and in Kentucky. And my practice focuses exclusively on fertility law. So that means I help build families through surrogacy and gamete donation. So my clients are intended parents, whether they are going through infertility and are using collaborative reproduction to build their family, or they're a member of the LGBTQ community and are using collaborative reproduction to build their family. So my clients are intended parents, they're surrogates, they're recipients, they're gametes. And what I do is I set up the legal framework to build and then protect their families.
That must be incredibly important because as we were talking about big feelings, when you're creating a family, you're helping a couple create a family and bring life into the world, how you feel at the beginning of the process might be different towards the end.
It's a long journey. And for folks who didn't expect to be on this journey, look, it's a club that infertility is a club that nobody wants to be a part of. I feel so privileged to be on this journey with my clients and help them build this family, build this family that they want so badly. And I always say I have the best clients in the world.
Was this something that you always aspired to, or just kind of discovered as you were training and becoming an attorney?
My career has been very much a jungle gym, and I've gone from different place to place. I started in big law in Chicago and worked in litigation. I then went in-house, did a lot of contract work, and now in fertility law, it combines those two pieces. Contract writing and drafting and negotiating is a big part of what I do. And then we also go to court, although we ask for not in person, we ask for not hearings so that it is a simple process. It's uncontested. And so I do have the experience also from my litigation days of doing court pleading. So it kind of, even though it seems very dissimilar, from a skill perspective, brings in those two elements.
Yeah. What would you say to a family? And I imagine, but my family is so very important to me. And we do know couples in our lives that haven't been able to have a child. It must be incredily heartbreaking to kind of discover that, wow, it ain't going to happen for us. How does it feel to be able to offer hope to those couples?
It's amazing. I mean, it's amazing what we are able to do from a technological standpoint, from a legal standpoint. And there are many pathways to parenthood. And so it can be a really long, it can be a difficult journey, and, just keep at it. And, sometimes it's not as we think it's going to be. I mean, parenthood is never as we think it's going to be. I'm constantly thinking I've got it figured out, and then I get, the surprise daily, actually. So just, to keep trying, keep being flexible, and continue holding out hope.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier that this book was inspired by your daughter, Mila, and you also shared with us that you have a younger son. Will there be a second book inspired by your son?
We'll see. I do have a title for it. I'm writing this wave of Mila the Maker. It did take a long time to write because I was filling it into little spaces here and there where I had the time to write it, to edit it, to get it published. I mean, there's so many elements. I've learned there's so many elements to writing a book beyond writing the book. And so the process is taking me probably 4 or 5 years at this point. So we'll see. It would be fun, but I also want to continue exploring where this one goes for a little bit.
Awesome. And this just occurred to me. I'm just curious. I remember my wife's, I guess our obstetrician, when our children were born, the same doctor helped us through that process. And in her office, she had pictures of all the kids that she helped bring into the world. Do you have something similar in your office of all the?
I do. You can't see it, and I could never show it because it would be confidential information. But I do. I have baby announcements and thank you notes, and I always put them up. I tell my clients my favorite part about what I do is when the babies are born and they send me pictures of their babies and them with their babies. It's the best part of my day. That's
wonderful. We should tell people where they can go to find out more about Mila the Maker and the 200-piece jigsaw puzzle.
Well, thank you. I would love to tell everybody that. So it's available on Amazon. They can find out more on my website, which is rachelloftspring.com. And then their favorite local bookstore should be able to order it as well. And I'd appreciate the support.
And if there's somebody listening out there who knows a couple or family that are struggling with this and they're in your area, is there a website for them to go to learn a little bit more about how you can help them in that way?
Yes, absolutely. So my law firm's website is the Family Law and Fertility Law Group.com, or they can find me on Instagram at Rachel Loftspring, and that will also point them really to the book or the law firm, whichever they need.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Mila the Maker and the 200-piece Jigsaw Puzzle. Our guest has been Rachel Loftspring. Hey, Rachel, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Hey, my friend, Jed here. We all know that for kids to develop a lifelong passion for reading, they need to get engaged with books that spark their imaginations and interest. Wouldn't it be great if they also get interested in history and geography at the same time? That's where the great fantasy book series that kids simply can't put down, The Adventures of Jimmy and Andrew, come in. A 9-year-old boy and his 3,300-year-old telepathic dog, who is rescued from the shelter, set off for adventures around the world with Jimmy's archaeologist parents. The first book in the series, American Stonehenge, has more than 300 positive reviews. To learn more, please visit jimmyandandrew.com. That's jimmyandandrew.com. Hey, my friends, we are so excited to welcome back to the show the author of the brand new middle grade novel. It's called Freedom Through the Narrow Gate. Please welcome back Mark David Pullen. Hey, Mark, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Living the dream here in Boston and excited to learn about Freedom Through the Narrow Gate. This is part of your Oasis King series. Am I right?
Yes, you are correct. It is book number 2 in the Oasis Chronicles.
Excellent. So tell us all about this book. Who are the new characters we're going to meet, and who are we going to revisit from the first?
So this is a very interesting book. This is a parallel timeline in the Chronicles. So this all takes place at the same time as book number 1. And so in this story, we get to meet a whole host of characters, a whole brand new host and cast of characters, from a different species. This whole story centers around, 2 young mice and a horde of rats that are chasing after them. So I took a different turn here, but I'm very excited about this story because I have big plans for the Chronicles. And I think that this was an important story to get told to help really progress the series.
Interesting. We had talked with my team, my summer team of interns, about some subjects we could take a deep dive into, and this didn't come off, but one of the interns suggested that we take a deep dive look into why so many books feature animals as characters. And I'm curious, for this middle grade novel, why did you choose to introduce us to a cast of mice and rats?
Well, it's really quite an interesting story. So I've been working on this story. This story is really a labor of love. I've been working on this story for over a decade. So this story, it's gone through a number of rewrites and edits, and it's a story that I'm passionate about. It's a story that I actually started writing before I wrote The Oasis King. And so the ideas actually came to me. I was working my full-time job at the time when I first started coming up with the characters and the plot and the setting for this story. I was working at a breeding facility for lab animals. And so I'm a daydreamer. I think we discussed that the last time. And I got daydreaming. Well, what would happen if these, just a handful of these animals got out, but they had been watching and observing what was happening to them on a daily basis, and they'd been picking up on human traits like talking and being able to read, and just really, what would happen if a handful of them got out. And that's kind of the way the story took root. And the way I kind of built it up was that the main protagonist in the story is in fact an escaped lab rat.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
As you mentioned that, I remember I was working long ago when I was still in college, and I was working with a construction kind of contractor job, doing a lot of different things. We had a job in a hospital, and there was a lab doing experiments on dogs, I think. And I know my boss was like, "You can't let them out. I don't care how you feel.
Yes.
You can't let them out."
Yes, that is a big no-no.
Yeah. What a fascinating way for that story to have come about. Now, did you go home from your job every night and just kind of add, little by little by little, or did it all come to you in one kind of swoop?
It did not. That's exactly how it was that it came a little bit at a time, and I'd make little notes on my iPhone on my break, and it turned into this story. Well, not so much this story, because like I said, it's gone through a lot of work. Over 10 years is a long time to be working on the same idea. But yeah, it was the ideas came a little bit at a time, and I was really, really just able to build around these little short, quick, daydreams almost. Something would pop into my head and I'd think about it. I'd make a quick note, and then I was able to build on it and elaborate, and this is what it turned into.
Wow, fascinating. So tell us a little bit of the action that we're going to experience.
There is a lot of action. My style is fast-paced action adventure, and I try to keep true to that. It's actually kind of exhausting trying to keep the pace because I have all these great ideas and these grand, explosive ideas that are going to keep people excited and wanting to turn the pages. And so that's the hard part. But yeah, it's a very exciting story. I have, like I said, it's these two young mice. They're out in search of blackberries, and they get kidnapped by the feared swamp rats. And from there, it's trying to escape and then meeting new friends in unexpected places that are going to help them find their way home.
Wow. You said it's exhausting for you to keep this pace up. I'm curious. We've had authors come on the show of picture books and say, I really, most of the book just came out in one setting. I was able to sit down, and that makes sense. It's a 32-page, 500, 600-word story. I know myself, I came home from a concert. I've mentioned a video that I wrote and created and produced back in 1989 called Meltdown, The Walls Are Separated. And most of that story kind of played out. I was watching this concert. Then I got home, and it's like, I'm going to put this down on paper before I forget it. And then the lights went out, and so I wrote it by candlelight. But again, that was like a half hour video. So we're not talking about a multi-thousand word middle grade novel. Were you able to sit down and just kind of go in one setting and get it all down? Or is it like, okay, I got this chapter out and I have to take a break so I can write the next chapter the next day?
That's exactly how it was. It was, trying to keep the pace and trying to keep it engaging. I can't say it any other way than it was exhausting. I would quite literally get a chapter or two done, and then I'd be fried for, a couple days anyway, before I could even look at my laptop again. Uh-huh. And then I'd sit down, the ideas, and just because I'm taking a break doesn't mean the ideas stop coming or things don't start developing more as you think about it. And then, it'd be the dreaded opening up the laptop again and, okay, here we go. And then sitting down and the same thing over and over again, a couple chapters, a chapter, maybe if I was lucky, and then, a couple days off. It was a roller coaster ride for sure.
Yeah. When you're in that exhaustive mode and you're, as you said, your brain is fried. Do you ever get to the point, I've been doing this for 10 years and, I got to put it away? Or is it like, yes, I can't wait to get back?
Yes, there was a couple times where I thought about putting it on a shelf and leaving it there for a little while. And just kind of putting it in the crock pot, letting it simmer for a while. But, I didn't, it was one of those stories that I just, every once in a while it would come back, and as much as I tried to shelve it, it would keep coming back. The ideas would keep coming, and it was just a constant work in progress. So to finally have it done and published and out there is, it's a tremendous feat. It feels like a tremendous feat anyway.
Yeah. Now you were mentioning that this is running in a parallel time to the first book in the series.
Yes.
Are we going to tie it all together? Are we able to read this book without reading book one first, or do we really need to read book one first?
No, the exciting thing about these two books is you can read them in any order. It doesn't matter. They're going to be, I painted them together. So there is little tie-ins to book one and book two in Freedom Through the Narrow Gate. And then in the Oasis King, once you read Freedom Through the Narrow Gate, you'll be able to read through the Oasis King and be like, oh, wait a minute now. And you can see where I tied everything together. And then book 3 is where the two timelines collide. And it's where from there, it's one straight series.
Fascinating.
Yes.
I'm always fascinated at learning a little bit about people's creative process, because it's so much different than what I'm doing on stage with my magic. A lot of it is just kind of impromptu, and so it's really neat to kind of take a look behind the curtain into someone's creative process.
Well, mine is certainly an interesting process. I don't ever turn off. I have the notebook next to the bed because in the middle of the night, I might have an idea. Something comes to me in a dream and I got to roll over and write it down. When it comes to this craft, so it comes to writing and creating, being a storyteller, I don't ever turn off. I am on all the time, and it's little things will set me off. A bird flying overhead in the shadow on the ground that oh, there it is. I just got it. I got to write it down, make a note because I am on all the time. I don't ever turn off.
Now, does that become a bit annoying to your family and friends sometimes?
Only when it's the really, really, really big details, because I tend to get a little emotional about those. I panic. I panic a little bit because when those hit me, they come quick and hard, and I have to write them down immediately. I got to write down the details before I lose them and before I forget. So I think that's probably the only time. Otherwise, when a fleeting thought here or there is okay, I'll write that down. But when it comes to, big chapter stuff, turning points and big plot points, when those hit me, I can imagine being out at dinner and having me panicking at the table going, I need a pen. Is a big deal.
Has it ever happened that you, missed one of those moments? You were in the car or you're at a meeting with your boss, and you just couldn't write it down and then you lost it.
It has on more than one occasion. And to have that happen is heartbreaking, because when like I said, I get a little emotional, it fills my heart with joy and I get excited that this is a wonderful idea, and to miss it, my feeling is it might come back later on down the road, but it will never feel the same as it does that first time. And it might be little details or, and I can stew on it and try to think and try to really bring it back. What was it? But the details never fully come back for me anyway.
Yeah. I find that it's when you're trying to bring it back, it doesn't happen. You just kind of gotta let it sit there, and I'm not gonna, and then it comes back, and you just have to make sure you're ready to catch it when it comes back.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. When you're talking with young people and they're telling you that they love your book and they love your stories and that they want to write stories, what kind of advice do you share with them?
My advice for them is that in order to be a good writer, you have to be a good reader. So you have to be reading, and you have to, one of the biggest points of advice that I give is that you have to really, because this is something I struggled with, you have to really narrow down your market and who you're writing to. And that's what you need to be writing. You're reading. So I'm a middle grade author. I need to be reading and investigating and seeing what other people are writing, because it's important. That's my audience. I need to know what they're into. I need to be in tune with what they're feeling. And as a 37-year-old man, that's not really easy. So to be in tune with this younger generation. So I have to be active in what's being put out there for my audience right now so that I can stay relevant to them.
So do you need to, cause I'm hearing what the kids are talking these days, and I'm like twice your age. And, so are you able to drop any skibbities and rizzes and fire to the novel?
Actually, I am not, but it's interesting because I just recently went to a writer's conference, and apparently some of the lingo I'm using in my stories, oh, that's old. You can't use that. The kids will have no idea what that means. And I'm like, but it's not that old. Come on. I said it. It can't be that old, but it is in fact quite outdated.
Yeah, it's, I was listening to somebody talk, and I still don't know what the words mean. And, I'm old enough that I can, I think most of the young people in my life would translate it for me.
Yeah, I would hope so. I have a nephew who is 17, and sometimes I have to ask him, what does this mean? Because I just don't know.
one of the things, of course, here on Reading with Your Kids is we encourage families to read with their kids every night, especially when they're young. That bonding time, that 20 minutes is so important. But I think, we forget about the benefits that we can get as parents and certainly our kids will get when we continue to read with them, when they become independent readers and co-read with them. So what kind of conversations do you think families can have as they're co-reading Freedom Through the Narrow Gate? What are the big kind of topics that people might want to dig into?
Well, it's interesting that this whole story is, this story takes place, the main part of the story takes place because, our main character, Jacob, one of our main characters, doesn't listen to his father. Like he's disobedient. He does not heed his father's warning. And that's what starts the chain of events that take us on this story. And so one of the things is that that I try to portray in this story is parents don't necessarily have to give you all the details. It should be enough to know that we love you and we're watching out for you. This is a subject that we don't need to explain ourselves. You have to trust us. Mm-hmm. And had Jacob trusted his father and heeded his father's warning in this story, we wouldn't have had the story. But it is the chain of events that take place when it all comes together at the end. It's one of those things. Had you listened to me in the first place, a lot of lives could have been saved. A lot of this could have been avoided because I love you and because I'm your father. I wanted the best for you and you wanted the best for yourself. And this is what it caused.
Yeah. Do you think that kind of message is best kind of experience when the kids kind of figure it out themselves, and instead of co-reading the book and the dad said, "Oh, if he had listened to the dad, he wouldn't have been in this."
I think so. Yes. I agree with that 100%. Nobody wants to be talked to by their parents. Oh, see, I told you if you would have just listened. But that's why I try to tie it together at the end that is very, it's very much the case. I love you and I have your best interests at heart. And sometimes as a parent, we shouldn't have to explain ourselves. You should trust that we're looking out for you with what we think are the best intentions. And so you have to trust us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so challenging for kids because they have to balance, it's I need to do this for myself. And they're even hearing it from us. Oh, you need to do it for yourself. You need to figure these things out for yourself. But at the same time, they have to know, okay, when do I trust and listen to the experience over here?
Yes, I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, I remember being a kid. I remember having my wants and desires, and I remember my parents saying, you'll thank me later. And most of the time I did. 9 times out of 10, I did thank them later.
Yeah. Tell me, what is it about this this genre, this middle grade age that you enjoy writing for?
Well, it's interesting because as I said, I just went to a writers conference, and one of the things that's expressed to me constantly is that there is a hunger and a need for middle grade authors because everybody is either moving up to young adult or down to children's because that's where the money in the market is. And so there's still a market for middle grade authors, but there's a shortage of middle grade authors.
Interesting.
Yeah.
As you're creating these books, obviously, and we've talked a lot about this on the podcast, especially for the many independent and self-published authors that we've had on and also that listen to the show, that when you start writing a book, you need to realize that you're starting a small business.
Yes.
And you need to think about that you are the CEO of this small business. Is that difficult for you to kind of put the creative hat on, then put the business hat on and switch them back and forth?
It's incredibly difficult. It is probably the most difficult thing I've encountered as an author. So I do a lot of in-person events. And there's times kids approach the table and they may not have the money for the book. And I have to remember that I am a small business owner. I'm going to have to pay taxes on all this, that as much as I would love to just give the book away, sometimes I can't just give the book away. Mm-hmm. And that is probably one of the most difficult things I have to do, is being both business minded and author minded.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that we encourage folks to do here is if you can't afford a book or if you can afford it and you think other families would love to read it, is to request that your local public library stock the book and bring it to their shelves.
Yes, absolutely. We do that a lot, actually. We've got letters out all over New York.
Great. Excellent.
Yes.
Well, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Freedom Through the Narrow Gate and find out more about the Oasis King series.
Sure. You can check out my website, theoasisking.com. You can find all the purchase links. I'm available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon. It's available everywhere that books are sold. And you can find a lot of information about the series and what's coming by following me on my website. There you can sign up for my newsletter. And I send that out once a month, and that tells you what I'm working on, what's coming down the road, and just what's been on my heart and what's coming.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Freedom Through the Narrow Gate. It is the new middle grade novel from our guest, Mark David Pullen. Hey, Mark, so great to see you again.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I had a blast.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. We are so excited to welcome a new friend to the show here to celebrate his book. It's called Wild About the Alphabet. Please welcome Mike Crowder. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jed. Good to hear. I don't know. I got nothing. Go ahead, brother.
Mike, it's great to have you on. Tell us about Wild About the Alphabet.
Well, Wild About the Alphabet is a STEM book about animals, cleverly disguised as a book about the alphabet. So it's got interesting facts about unusual animals. It's got geography, vocabulary words. It's funny, and it has really pretty pictures. And it's guaranteed for all ages.
Cool. What's the most interesting animal that we would find in the book?
I think the most interesting animal, and it's my favorite, is called the echidna, which is very closely related to a platypus, if you know what a platypus is.
Uh-huh.
It lays eggs. It keeps its babies in a pouch inside a marsupial. It's typically found on the roadside in Australia.
Wow. Australia is one of those, there's so many really wild and unique creatures in Australia. Any idea why that is?
No, I don't have any idea. For some reason, evolution just went crazy over in Australia, and they have kangaroos and echidnas and platypuses and just other kinds of bizarre animals that you will see nowhere else in the world. It's just it's an evolutionary nightmare.
Yeah, it sounds like that. And people that I know from Australia, we think kangaroos are really cute and everything. But I guess in Australia, they're kind of like squirrels, and people kind of get annoyed because they're all over the place.
I imagine so. And, you don't want to mess with one because it will knock your block off.
That's right. Hey, tell me, what was the inspiration behind this book?
The inspiration for my book was my wife, in a roundabout way, because I had drawn a picture in college of a chimpanzee in the shape of the letter M, which is in the dust jacket of the book. And my wife saw that and that was like in 1986 I drew it. So it's how old I am. And so my wife had seen that when we met in 2010 or 2009, and she saw it and she said, "Oh, you should do a whole alphabet." And at the time, I didn't want to draw it all, and least of all, I wanted to draw an alphabet. So I relayed this to my wife, and she said, "No, please, please." So she kept bugging me about it, and after a few years, I finally came up with an idea for a second letter, which was the alligator. And then the third letter, which was the zebra, which is a bonus letter in the book. And then when I came up with the idea for the pangolin, I was like, oh, it is on. And that's how the book came about, was I just started drawing it. And my sister-in-law at the time, or still my sister-in-law, at the time, she said, you should write a whole book about it. And I was like, Gurn. So I wrote a book, and that's how it came to be.
It's interesting. Obviously you enjoyed drawing back in 1986 when you created that first image, and then you're telling me that you didn't want to draw. What was it? Because I hear a lot of creative people say they go through these periods where the last thing they want to do is to work on their art. Do you have any idea what it was that kind of made you walk away from art and drawing and illustrating?
Quite frankly, I know exactly what it was. I was in a car accident and in a coma for 11 days. And that happened in December of 1990. And after that, I just stopped drawing. I had no desire to draw whatsoever. In fact, my mother said, why don't you draw? And I'm like, well, why don't you draw? She's like, well, I can't. I'm like, well, I just don't want to. It's a totally different thing. I just had no desire to draw whatsoever. And then I did it a little bit here and there. Was never really strong at it since I had graduated college, or since the coma. And then, like I said, when I worked on the first book, I relied very heavily on Photoshop to clean up the imaging, and it took me about a year and a half to do it.
Uh-huh.
When I redid after having done my second book, I had become comfortable enough with my illustration skills that I went back in and redrew everything in the first book, in the first alphabet. I was going to just redo the pangolin because I was very unhappy with that. And then I was like, oh, quail, I'm not really happy with that. And then I was like, I'm not really happy with this one. And I was like redrawing 24 of the 26 letters. So that's and that took me like, I don't know, 3 months. So it was very quick after, the second time around. And now I'm working on my third book, which is an alphabet book using dinosaurs. And I'm cranking those out at the rate of one a day.
Wow.
In fact, I just did the J, is for Janosaurus, and it took me 3 hours.
That's amazing. That really is amazing. So has the love for drawing returned?
Yes, it has.
That's wonderful.
I'm definitely loving it, and I'm getting to the point where almost as good as I used to be. So it feels really good to be doing it.
Well, I'm very thankful that you survived your coma. It's fascinating how different events can really change our lives beyond just the obvious injury.
Yeah, I never would have thought that I would ever not. I mean, I drew every day of my life from the time I was 2 years old until the time of my coma. And so I cannot have imagined just not wanting to draw whatsoever. It was just like, no desire. And, like I said, it changed my life dramatically, obviously, because I wasn't drawing anymore. Mm-hmm. And, I did use it like I said, I used it on occasion to make money, doing courtroom illustrations and that kind of thing. But other than that, no desire whatsoever.
Well, I have to say that you are absolutely the first person that I've met who has done any courtroom illustrations.
Oh, well, I used to do it like way back in the late 80s. I started doing it. A friend of a friend had asked me if I could do it for a local TV station here in town. So I went down to the courthouse with her and started drawing, and I drew like 3 figures, and she said, "You're hired." And it became so I don't know if it was just because it was necessity or whatever. But I, in my humble opinion, became the best courtroom illustrator in town, which is not really saying a whole lot. But best courtroom illustrator in town. My drawings were used all over the country for doing federal trials. But and in fact, they were even not used by ABC World News Tonight because they ran a story about the what is it? I can't. There's a restaurant, Greasy Spoon restaurant in Atlanta that did a story on instead of the story about Carlos Later, who was the guy I was drawing at the time. And gosh, I'll discombobulate here. So yeah, I did a very good job of it.
Well, that's great. What was the most interesting case that you drew?
The most interesting case was probably the very first one. Carlos Later was the kingpin of the biggest drug cartel out of Colombia, in the biggest trial that they'd ever had in the United States. And so that was my first trial I drew. Probably the most, and I say that's the most interesting, but the most interesting, I think, was really the most boring one, was the last one I drew. And a sheriff up in Nassau County got busted for selling drugs out of the sheriff's department. And they kept bringing in as far as witnesses go, they just had character witnesses. And they would bring in this like long line of character witnesses going, "Oh no, he would never do that. He would never do that." They're going. And then the sentencing here, they were saying, or at the arraignment, they were saying, when they determined if they're going to go in jail or not, they had a whole bunch of his buddies coming forth and going, "Well, if he put him in jail, he's going to commit suicide. I just know it." And the judge was going, "Well, do you have a background in psychiatry or psychology?" "Well, no." And then, "Well, go sit down." And so, like, finally, they've done like 15 of these people. And the judge finally says, "Look, if none of you have psychology degrees or psychiatry degrees, go home." And they all left. So that was, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. It's just, it's really fascinating. And it's fascinating that you went from, drawing court cases to writing children's books.
Well, like I said, it just so happened because I'd drawn the alphabet, where I was like in the midst of drawing the alphabet when my sister-in-law said, "You should write a book." And I was like, and he just, slapped me upside the head. And I was like, man, that makes perfect sense. So I wrote the book and drew it. It's like I said, it took me about a year and a half to draw it. It took me a few more months to actually finish writing it. And then I went to get it published, and everybody said, "No, we don't want to publish it." And that's why I went self-published. Mm-hmm. But at the time I quote unquote self-published through what they call a vanity publisher, whose name I will not use here. Because they did me wrong. Uh-huh. And so I published it that way. And then I met some people on Facebook, and they were saying you should do it all by yourself and not involve one of these vanity publishers. Mm-hmm. And then you can do it the way you want it, do it right, and it'll cost you a lot less money and you'll make a lot more profit. Right. And I said, "Oh, I can see that then. I like that. I like the idea of making money." And so that's when I did the second printing was independently. And the cool thing was because I was able to use a heavier weighted paper than they used. Even though I had requested the heavier weighted paper on my first book, they used a thinner weighted paper, a lighter weight. I was able to get the matte cover that I wanted and not the glossy. I was able to get the typeface that I wanted and not the ones they wanted. I was able to get the colors the way I wanted it and not the way they wanted it. And so the second one is really my book. And the third edition, the third printing I just had done last year, is definitely the alphabet book that I wanted to begin with.
That's wonderful. How have you enjoyed going out and meeting your potential readers at different events?
I actually love it, and it's really cool, especially when you meet a child, and his little eyes light up or whatever, and they get all excited. I've actually had parents come to me and tell me how much their kids love the books, and kids come back and say how much I love the books. But also I had one parent come to me and tell me that her son was drawing my pictures. He was copying my pictures for his, on a drawing. Mm-hmm. And which I thought really amazing, because that was how I started way back, was copying other people's pictures. So that was really fascinating.
Yeah, that must make you feel fantastic.
Yes, it was quite the kick.
Yeah.
I'm very, very happy about it.
Well, I want to know how you thanked your sister-in-law for giving you this inspiration and setting you on this new course.
I said thank you. But of course, my wife gets a credit in the front of my book as the thanks to the most what is it? The sweetest little thing ever. That's my wife.
Uh-huh.
So thank you to the sweetest Gwen, the sweetest little thing ever.
That's wonderful.
So she as being the inspiration.
Well,
So,
we should. I was going to say we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about the alphabet and find out more about you.
Well, they can go to my website at graysheepgraphics.com, and that's GRAYSHEEP graphics.com, or they can check me out on Facebook or other social media like Instagram, and take a look at me there. Awesome. The best thing is to go to the website, and then you can order books, or if you go to Amazon, you can order the books too. But if you order from me, they're signed.
There you go. Motivation to get to that website.
Exactly.
Mike, we've had a great time speaking to you, and we want to encourage everybody to check out Wild About the Alphabet. Our guest has been the author and illustrator, Mike Crowder. Mike, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Jed. I really appreciate your interview.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. Please connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at JedleyMagic on X. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Rachel Loftspring. Please be sure to check out Mila the Maker and the 200-piece Jigsaw Puzzle. Mark David Pullen. Please be sure to check out Freedom Through the Narrow Gate. And, of course, we want to thank Mike Crowder. Check out Wild About the Alphabet. I absolutely want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Rayling Tang. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.